Hello and welcome to the Get French Football News Preview Show. I'm your host, Eric Devin. Joining me are regular panelists Nathan Staples, Adam White, and Peter Bowler. Lyon were seemingly handed the perfect opportunity to record a result at home to Juventus as former Marseille man Mario Lemina was sent off early in the second half. However, substitute Juan Cuadrado struck 15 minutes from time to give the visitors 3 points, with Gianluigi Buffon rolling back the ears and pulling off several fine saves, including from Alexandre Lacazette from the spot. Monaco were also in action Tuesday, and left it late again to snatch a draw in Moscow. Their own loanee, Lassina Traore, had opened the scoring in the first half, before Bernardo Silva equalized with 3 minutes remaining. The Monegasques do remain, however, in first place in the group thanks to a draw between Bayer Leverkusen and Tottenham. On Wednesday, Paris Saint-Germain defeated FC Basel 3-0 at the Parc des Princes, Angel Di Maria scoring for the first time this season, before Lucas Moura and Edson Cavani made the margin a bit more comfortable. And earlier this evening, Nice won 1-0 at Salzburg thanks to an early goal from Alassane Plea. Saint-Etienne, meanwhile, hosted Kabbalah, who were last seen eliminating Lille in the third qualifying round. But Les Verts avenged their French compatriots with a 1-0 win to boost their chances of qualification, thanks to a Ricardinho own goal. And finally, Frank McCourt has wasted no time in making the first managerial change of the Ligue 1 season, with the former Lille and Roma boss Rudi Garcia set to take over at Marseille. So I am going to pass the mic, as it were, to Nathan quickly, as we're going to speak about Lyon's 1-0 loss to Juventus at the Parc OL on Tuesday.
Yeah, and Eric, it was a heartbreaking loss for Lyon in the end, and you've already mentioned some of the bits from it, like Mario Lemina being sent off. They now face that difficult trip in 2 weeks' time in Italy. Was this a case of the team not taking the chances that they were presented, or was it simply, as Twitter exploded with, an impressive performance from the effervescent Gianluigi Buffon?
I think a little bit of both. I think about Toliso's header that Buffon did well to save from a free kick in the second half, and there were a couple times Diakabi had a free header as well that was off target, but really strongly delivered from a corner. So Lyon did have their chances, but I mean, Buffon, the discussion on Twitter is he the best goalkeeper in the world still at this age? Neuer's never tested, et cetera, et cetera. On this evidence, I mean, there's really not much you can say about that. Lacazette's penalty was a little bit weak. I will say that he seemed to open up his body a little bit too much on the delivery and delivered it without a whole lot of power. And Buffon was able to get down to save that. But yeah, on the whole, it was really the Italians' night. For someone who's turning 39 in the new year, it's just really an incredible performance, especially in the wake of a couple of uneven nights for Juventus and for Italy as well. So it's going to be difficult to see Lyon getting a road to qualification at this point, but just really an incredible performance from Buffon.
Yeah, he was undeniably still one of the best keepers in the world, even at that, even as the years keep advancing. But you mentioned Alexandre Lacazette there. He missed that penalty, and it wasn't the greatest penalty in the world, and he struggled to get involved after that as well. Was starting him the wrong choice with Rachid Ghezal and Matteo Valbuena available on the bench?
I think so. I understand why Genesio started him. Obviously, there's his goal-scoring record, but also there's one thing that I think Lacazette sometimes does not get enough credit for, I should say, and that's his defensive acumen playing as a striker, applying pressure to the opposing defenses. And he was not at the races in terms of that either. Bonucci repeatedly had too much time on the ball to deliver the long raking passes that he does so well. So in addition to his failure to really link up and find space with Fekir, there wasn't really a whole lot of cohesion between the two of them. Lacazette wasn't at his best defensively either. It was a pretty disappointing evening from the striker. Didn't really have any clear-cut chances, but also wasn't really doing anything off the ball to help out his teammates either. Whether that's fitness, whether that's confidence, whether that's the occasion. Again, this is the first big European match that's been held at Parc OL. I mean, no disrespect to Dinamo Zagreb, but let's be honest, the difference between them and Juventus is a country mile, as they say. So, yeah, it was a little bit frustrating. I think that, Genesio was probably under pressure to start him, but coming back from injury, he definitely was not at his sharpest and probably should have been an option off the bench on 60 minutes, say.
Yeah, he didn't. I don't think he looked fully fit on the evening, really. But finally, should Genesio have opted away from that 3-5-2? It didn't really seem to suit the way that at least against Juventus they were setting up almost identically.
Yeah, I do think there were some problems with this. I think that Diakabi played a great match as part of the back three. I think the defense actually did pretty well. But without Rebus there to be able to shuttle back and forth and to be an attacking option, it just really wasn't coming off. I love that work rate and ethic of Jeremy Morel, but he just does not offer enough going forward. And it was the same problem that we'd seen at Sevilla, where Jordi Gaspar was on the other side, that the 3-5-2, for it to really work at its best, both of those wingbacks need to be shuttling up and down the pitch and being able to offer both a genuine attacking threat and a degree of solidity in defense. And Morel did decently well defensively, but offered next to nothing going forward, and too much of the onus was placed on Rafael to create the attacks, and it was too easy for Sandro to track back. And Patrice Evra, and I should also say, played a really lovely match against him. It was a surprise to see the former French international at this point being played as part of a back three, but he really took that job very seriously and didn't stray too far from his mark. And I think he was really integral to a lot of Lyon's frustrations. So in general, yeah, I think they probably should have gone with a 4-3-3. That system worked really well from the off when Genesio had taken over midway through last season. And given the personnel available to him, I think that probably would have made more sense on the evening, with Gonalon essentially along with Tolisso, Darder, and Morel and Rafael. Probably with Cornet or Jezal opposite Fekir.
Yeah, and it's such a frustrating thing that you don't get these kind of opportunities against big teams very often, and you kind of have to seize them in the moment, and it now means it's going to be a difficult chance for Lyon to sort of qualify now. But I'll hand the reins back over to you, Eric, as we carry on chatting about the rest of the Champions League fixtures over this week.
Yeah, let's move on to the other match that was held on Tuesday. That was Moscow hosting Monaco, CSKA Moscow. Nathan, let's start with the hosts. You watched this match. Much was made in the buildup of the absences of Roman Eremenko and Alan Djigoev. But how did CSKA function in attack? Did this 4-2-3-1 stack up, and was it effective?
Yeah, we made a lot, and I made a lot in my piece for the site that missing two players the size of Dzagoev and Eremenko, you can't deny is vitally important because they're so big to their team. I mean, Eremenko is one of their top scorers. Dzagoev, we've seen in the past, is a really creative player. So you were wondering where that spark would come from. Would it come from someone like Tosic or Golovin or Ivanov, one of these younger Russian players that they have hopes for? When you also stack up the Lassina Traore playing at centre forward for them, you think, when you've seen him at Monaco in the past playing against his parent club, that he doesn't really offer too much, but they were pretty good. I thought, especially in the first half, CSKA for long periods, after the first, say, 15 minutes where they sort of had a feeling out period, they were really on top. And I thought that Monaco really struggled to get a real firm foothold in the game. The first 15 minutes, they probably should have given something with the amount of dominance that they really had on the ball, at least. But they allowed CSKA to settle. They allowed them to start making little moves with Tosic and Nacho in that sort of wandering role, and got more involved. And then the goal comes from Traore. It's a little lucky, but Subacic had looked a little bit suspect before that. He made a couple of clearances as players got in behind, but they were push and shove. He was maybe a little late to one of them. He could have maybe given away a penalty on the second one to Tosic. It's a strange challenge. He sort of dives in and doesn't touch the ball, but it's very strange. But yeah, I was surprised by how effective CSKA were without those two very important players for them. And they still managed to create chances, especially in that first half. They sort of faded a little bit in the second half. But yeah, they really impressed me with how they stuck to their jobs and knowing that they needed a victory in this one, that they went all out for it. Although obviously there was heartbreak for them at the end with the fabulous goal from Bernardo.
Defensively, this team kept their good form up. Let's say Cesca, that is. But Peter, are there signs that Monaco can get at them in different ways in the next match?
I would think so. Yeah, I mean, I think it was quite interesting that they lined up with a 4-3-3 against CSKA Moscow. I was surprised by that, especially as a lot of their success so far this season has come with having more than one body up front. I thought Germain looked a little bit isolated in that game, actually, and I do wonder if maybe if they'd gone for something like a 4-4-1-1 or a 4-4-2 with Bernardo Silva and Germain as a partnership up front, perhaps they would have done a little bit better. I think they missed a trick there, really. Moscow's weakness for me is their centre-backs, Berezutsky and Ignashevich. Apologies to any Russian listeners who I've just offended with my horrible pronunciation. But they're so slow. And I would have thought that sticking, multiple strikers up front would have helped to really utilise that fact. But no, they really intended to push down the flanks instead and try and trouble the fullbacks. And I thought this was a mistake, really, as Moscow are actually quite good in the wide areas. So, yeah, I think going forward, they might want to maybe study their opponents a little bit better and look at their weaknesses, because for me, against Moscow, they were glaringly obvious. But Jardim's a smart guy. Obviously, Monaco have done very, very well this season and continue to do so. They're grinding out results. So, I think he'll get it right next time for sure.
Nathan, the big question, I think, in terms of the lineup with Nabil Dirar still absent was, with both Benjamin Mendy and Djibril Sidibe fit, was it a surprise to see Andre Arashi starting, given the money spent on the two young fullbacks this summer?
Yes and no. I mean, personally, and from at least a talent sort of view, you would start both Mendy and Sidibe, because I've never quite seen the usefulness of Raji, but Leonardo Jardim has used him in the Champions League regularly as the right back, as a sort of security blanket, so they don't push too far forward like they tend to do in the league. But was it the right decision in the end? I don't think he had the greatest game. He did come off for Mendy after 69 minutes, and that was probably the right decision. And Mendy was better getting forward and switching Sidibe to his more natural position, although we all know how successful he was at left back for Lille last season. It does. It will, at least to the normal view, it will seem strange that you keep playing Raji, and I personally feel that Raji's, while he's competent defensively and he's good in the air, which is a bonus compared to obviously both of them, with him being more of a centre back. He doesn't offer enough for me going forward, often enough at least. He can join in and he's a willing runner, but he's not the greatest crosser of a ball. He's a bit lethargic, and if he does push forward, because of his lack of pace compared to the other two, he does struggle to get back with speed if teams break on them, which is what CSK did for most of this game, of playing a sort of a strange counter-attack game for a home team. You usually obviously see the home team be more dominant, but in the future at least, I would prefer to see Sidibe on the right and Mendy playing left back if they're both fit. But you can't disagree that so far in the Champions League, Leonardo Jardim's got it absolutely right, although Monaco would have absolutely loved to win in this game. A win next week gives them a real platform because of the draw in the other game, but it's difficult to argue with Jardim's decisions when he's getting results.
Just finally, Peter, what about Jardim's tactics? Would you prefer a 4-4-2 with, say, maybe Kylian Mbappe alongside Valère Germain? They would, I think, with the younger player, his pace and energy would maybe do a little bit better to stretch Ignashevich and Berezutsky, or was a slightly more cautious approach more sensible away from home in terms of keeping possession?
Yeah, I can see what you mean. Obviously, they're the away team and they want to try and control as much of the ball and stop Moscow from attacking, because I think, like Nathan alluded to, that's what we thought they were going to do. But they did set up strangely. The Russian side, despite doing well in their own league, didn't come at Monaco quite in the way that we thought they would. And I don't think it quite worked out there. Which is obviously telling in the result. For me, when I've watched Monaco play, I've been really impressed whenever I've seen Bernardo Silva just play off the striker. I really like the way that he creates space, and he's a very skillful, very talented young player. So for me, I think I mentioned earlier, I would be maybe looking at a 4-4-1-1 with Silva playing off Germain. But like I said, I think Jardim will get it right next time. He's obviously a smart guy. Monaco looked like such a different team compared to last season, and the fact that they've obviously managed to keep hold of players like Fabinho as well was just really added to that. So, yeah, I think going forward, there's a lot to like about this Monaco side.
Yeah, that 4-4-1-1 will certainly be easier. Nabil Dirar should be back to play on the right in the next match. So moving on now to Paris Saint-Germain's defeat of Basel. Adam, let's start with you. Basel hit the woodwork 3 times, had another handful of scuffed or sliced shots. The Swiss side have been a thorn in the side of bigger clubs in the recent past, but their performance seemed more down to PSG's defense. What was the problem yesterday?
I think the problem was twofold. I spoke to our Swiss analyst here at Football Radar earlier in the day about the game, and he was furious. He felt that Basel deserved or did enough to deserve a point, which I tend to agree with in some regards, at least. I think the problem was that, one, yes, you're right, that defensively PSG were a little bit suspect yesterday, complacent perhaps, lost markers from dead balls and set pieces and crosses, and they were definitely out-muscled and outgunned in those areas from Basel. I think it was something that they noticed Basel. They hit PSG in the counter-attack, and they did play to those sort of strengths of theirs, where they got a lot of balls into the box. And I think at least 2 of the chances they hit the post were from headers. So it's obviously something that they noticed, because I don't think PSG really faced too many crosses in Liga, and it's not something that they are accustomed to defending. Obviously, players like Marquinhos and Thiago Silva, they're both world-class, if at least in Thiago Silva's case, Marquinhos not far from that. Centre backs, so they should be able to deal with this kind of thing, but perhaps a degree of rustiness from their point of view played into Basel's hands, and they were able to get lots of crosses in and cause PSG problems in those areas. But I think Basel deserves some credit. Okay, PSG were a bit lax defensively, but Basel set up well. They tried to focus on where PSG were weak, not just in those from crosses, but the way they sat back, the wider players pulling in alongside the fullbacks defensively to form like a 6 across the back and then hit them on the break. I think Basel deserves some credit, and 3-0 is possibly the most flattering scoreline we've seen in the Champions League this season to date. I don't know if PSG really deserved that margin of victory, and I think perhaps that's something that they'll look at next time, especially for the away leg, because the Swiss League, there are a lot of crosses, so I think it's something perhaps Basel were used to both dealing with and applying in their own game. So I think perhaps when they go away, Basel very good at home, and of course English teams, notably so in recent years, problems and others at home. I think that's something they have to look at. So I don't think it's entirely down to PSG's defensive sort of complacency yesterday, but Basel played well, and they exploited what they saw as some weaknesses for PSG. So lucky to win 3-0, but still some stuff to work on at a higher level in the Champions League for me.
Nathan, Adrien Rabiot had a fine match on the road to the midfield 3, at least in my opinion, with Verratti playing the deep-lying role. The 2 essentially swap positions from their habitual roles for this match. Talk to me about the effect of that switch and whether this is PSG's best 11.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to give Rabiot more freedom to join the attacks in that slightly more advanced role. At least he works best as a box-to-box player. He's got the energy to work back and forth and link the attacks. And he had a couple of good long-range strikes. He was maybe unlucky if he'd got one on target and tested the keeper a little bit better, that would have improved. But I thought he had a really good game, really. And when he gets involved, he can be really, really impressive. And again, the same thing for Verratti. I think he's a much better playing as a deep-lying playmaker and dictating the play, still breaking up attacks as well, because he's let's say tenacious might be the best way to describe Verratti's style, without being too uncomplimentary about his regular appearance in the referee's notebook as a booking. But whether this is the best 11, no. I think if you're going to play 4-3-3 with PSG and those 2, I would rather see Krychowiak as a defensive midfielder, allowing Verratti a little bit more space to create and dictate play from a different area. Yes, he may have slightly less options because he's not Matuidi in front of him, but at the same time, Verratti, as he openly admits himself, he takes risks with the ball because of his style of play. And if you're playing as a defensive midfielder like that, if you lose the ball, then you're the opponents are right on your back four, and that's a nightmare for defenders, and that just simply won't last. So I prefer Krychowiak if they're going to play 4-3, or heaven forbid play Thiago Motta, but I would prefer Krychowiak with Verratti and Rabiot in the middle, on current form at least as well. But they still need to sort out what they're doing with that front three. I thought Di Maria scores, but he's very ineffectual. I thought Cavani looked better at least, but overall they were battered by this Basel side, especially in the first half. I thought it was another unassuming performance for PSG that really needs something, and they just need probably what us English say would a good kick up the arse. Maybe it might be the right thing to say. They just need. It just seems like they're not reacting to these defeats they've had in Ligue 1 and bits. Then they just need a bit of oomph back into their play, especially in the Champions League, because performances like this in the knockout rounds will see them eliminated because teams will punish them more heavily than, unfortunately and unluckily, Basel did on Wednesday evening.
Right, moving on to the Europa League. Start with today's earlier match. Nathan, staying with you. Nice took a deserved lead, but really had a difficult time absorbing Salzburg's pressure. What was missing as Aiglon tried to maintain their lead?
I thought they did a reasonable job defensively for the majority of this game. Salzburg had a couple of chances, but nothing incredibly clear-cut, and when they did, it was straight at Johan Cardinal. They really lack a spark, and they've struggled in Austria this season. But I thought the thing that they were lacking to maintain that lead was a bit more from Alassane Player. He struggled to hold the ball up on occasions, and that allowed Salzburg to keep coming at Nice and forcing them to defend even more, which pulled Dalbert and Pereira further back, especially in the second half. And he struggled after the goal. He scores a really nice goal, which is a terrible mistake by Wisdom and the other centre-back to allow him it's such an easy opportunity, and he sticks it between the goalkeeper's legs. But he has two other opportunities in the second half to really kill off this game, and he misses both. And it's a real shame. I thought the one player I would like to highlight who hasn't played often for Nice this season is Mathieu Bodmer. I thought he was excellent in that defensive midfield role. He calmed the play down. He kept possession nicely. Didn't try and do anything too overly complicated. And then they brought him off, and Seri did exactly the same. And that was exactly the kind of thing they needed this evening. They got a relatively early goal, sat on it, and knew that Salzburg probably didn't have the confidence or the ability maybe to push on and pull themselves back into the game. But this is, you mentioned in a tweet actually, Eric, that they were slightly depleted without starting Belhanda, or Balotelli wasn't with the squad, and without Jean-Michel Seri, but they showed a little bit more about their depth, I thought, and this result now, if they get another one next week, in 2 weeks' time in Nice, they might be back in it if Schalke won this evening. So if they can beat Krasnodar again when that game goes back to Germany, then there's an open spot for Nice if they can beat the Russians at home. So questions for Favre now, because obviously the league's got to be the focus, but they've made it a little bit more complicated for themselves in a weird way this evening.
Yeah, that 5-2 loss is going to be a little bit difficult to overcome if it does come down to head-to-head between themselves and Krasnodar. So we're going to move on now to the match that just ended about half an hour ago here, and that's Saint-Etienne's 1-0 defeat of Kabbalah. Peter, this match was less than riveting. Saint-Etienne were really wasteful. One particular culprit was Oussama Tanan, who continues his poor start to the season after having looked really impressive after coming over from the Dutch League in January last season. Is this down to the way he's being used, or is there something else at play here?
Yeah, I'm not really sure on that one, to be honest. I mean, he still looks like a decent player to me because he's got all the want in the world, especially going forward. He's one of those players that, as a fan, you love to watch because he picks the ball up, he faces the opponent's goal, and he goes for it, and that's great. The problem, as you alluded to, Eric, is that he's just so wasteful. And funnily enough, that was kind of a theme for Saint-Etienne this evening. So many squandered chances, despite quite a lot of good play, especially in the wide areas. I thought Monet Paquet was particularly impressive, somebody I'm a big fan of. Save as well, the loanee from, I think it's Newcastle. he was really impressive as well. So I'm not sure with Tanan. I like him. He was impressive in the Eredivisie, and there's definitely a good player in there somewhere. But if he continues to squander chances like he did tonight, he'll find himself on the bench, especially when Roman Hamuma gets back into the team.
Adam, coming to you finally to wrap up our European section of the show. With Mainz and Anderlecht having drawn, 3 teams in this group are now level on 5 points. Is Galtier right to prioritize this competition?
Sorry, could you repeat that? You cut out.
Yep. With Mainz and Anderlecht having drawn, 3 teams in this group are now level on 5 points. Is Galtier right to prioritize this competition?
I think possibly. I think Galtier is under pressure this season to develop in both domestic terms and European terms. I think that he has been his longest serving manager in the league, and he's developed every year, and they've progressed until the last couple of years, where they've really kind of treaded water a bit, especially in league. And they've done a bit better in Europe. They went out in the boots just a couple of years ago, and then made it through, and they're very unlucky to go against Basel last year. But I think there is an expectation from higher up the club for him to go towards the quarterfinals in the Europa League, which, given Zenit's form and their squad, and perhaps the resources, I suppose, although they're obviously a very big competition, to say the least. I think it's possible if they get the best out of the place and they avoid the injury that they had last week. But I think the reason that he's kind of been resting players, especially at this weekend, and then sort of looking towards this game, is because winning this game is huge. They really, after the 2 draws, they needed this win. Going at the group stages would be a massive regression for them, and what's expected of Galtier. So he's really got to balance Liga and Europa League for the rest of the campaign, which is going to be difficult. Although they've got a decent size squad, obviously, it's something he's going to look at. So I don't know if he's prioritising Europa League overall. Definitely this week, it looks like he has decided to prioritise Europa League because he needs to get through the group stage. I honestly think if they were to go out the group stages here, and perhaps their league form continues like it has been, it's been pretty poor, but they're scraping a good half-decent start to the season with lots of late goals. I mean, they shouldn't have got a draw against Fusion really at the weekend. Fusion were relatively comfortable for a lot of that game defending, held them at arm's length. So I think for now, it could easily, going forward, it could easily unravel for Galtier. And if they were to go out, he could be under pressure quite quickly. So I think this week he's definitely right to prioritise it, but going forward, I think we'll try and balance the two, because they need to both push towards the top 3 and get out of this group and go beyond. So it's going to be a tough season for him, and he may end up having to prioritise Europa League if they get in the league. So definitely worth prioritising this week. They need the win.
All right, Adam's experiencing a bit of audio difficulty there. Hopefully that was able to come across. So we are now moving on to our League preview part, and we're going to a quick update on our prediction standings. Adam, despite having missed 2 weeks ago, had a great job last week. He got one score right and 2 results right. It takes him into second place on 14 points. Nathan is still our runaway leader on 21, while Peter and I are in the relegation zone. I don't know which one of us has goal difference at 12 points each. Again, it's 3 points for the correct result, 1 point for the correct. 3 points for the correct score, 1 point for the correct result. We're going to start with you, Adam, looking at Bordeaux versus Nancy. Bordeaux have been much more solid at the back since losing 4-1 to Toulouse. A result that looks better by the week given Toulouse's start to the season. Nicolas Palois was hugely impressive last weekend, but his partner, Igor Levchuk, has been a great find in general. Are Les Girondins European contenders with this improved defense, or is there still something missing?
I still think the European contenders, yes, but I think that there's going to be there's still a lot to work on. If you look at their squad, I think it's at least the 4th best in the league. They could challenge Lyon and Monaco, but I think it's the 4th best. I think that almost quite comfortably, actually. And we have like Jeremy Roland, Jeremy Menez, Diego Roland, international class striker.
Adam, your microphone's really struggling right now. I wondered if you could.
Oh, is this any better?
Yes.
Okay, I'll stay like this. Yes, so Diego Roland, as I said, is an international class striker. They've got both Jeremys, who are both, league and pedigree, into France caps, but between them, Adam Younes coming through, Malcolm coming through. But defensively, they've looked far better. With Nicola Power's been a revelation for them since he joined. He's been fantastic last season and this season when he was injured. There was a massive difference with him out of the side. And as you said, the Polish lad that's come in has been. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his surname. I'm going to call him Igor from now on. But he's been fantastic. Reads the game really well. Covers for Nicola Power brilliantly, and they're a good little partnership. So I think that's sort of an area of the team that's kind of become established. So Karasek back in goal is a really good shout from Gorvanek. And Sabli's a good right back, a very good league and right back, and Contenta can be solid when he wants to be. But for me, the problem is those bigger players that have come in, like Toulon, Menez, perhaps even Diego Roland sometimes, although he's been there a while, but then underperforming. I think there's still a lot of form to find from those sorts of players. That if they're going to push for Europe, if they're going to push for top 3, perhaps, which isn't beyond the realms of possibility with the squad they've got. I think that they need more from Menez and Toulon in particular. All right, Toulon's been injured and he's only really played 4 Ligue 1 games, I think, so far. But even so, he hasn't stood out like he did in preseason, where I thought he was brilliant. I really thought, obviously, he's a very good player. We know he's a great player, but I really thought this is a real coup for Bordeaux to sign him, even though he's 32, 33 now. That was a huge thing for them. But Menez has also struggled since he's come in. I think he's only shown flashes of the class that he's got. So I really want to see more from those two, and perhaps Diego Roland as well. So there's definitely potential there. They've got a great squad, but I still think in those new signings, those key players need to perform if they're going to make that jump.
All right. And what about Nancy? You wrote this week on the site that you see the side being more competitive since switching to a 5-man defense. But is that the product of a general optimism, or do you honestly feel that they have a point to prove in this French top flight season?
I think they've definitely got something of a point to prove. I think they started the season, they looked very open at the back. They looked like a little bit out of their depth. I think I made the comparison in our column, Eric, about our league and review. That I made the comparison with Troyes, who came up last season, were unable to make too many signings due to financial restrictions, and they continue to play the same way they had in Ligue 2. And although we've talked about Ligue 2 players coming up to Ligue 1 and abroad, perhaps so there's a few in the Premier League, Riyad Mahrez being the obvious one, that there is class in, there's quality players in Ligue 2, but the standard overall in terms of the squads and the teams in general there's a big jump. So Troyes continued to play like they were Ligue 2 champions. They were too open, they were too brittle. Their defence, although they had a lot of injuries, but their defence was far too weak, and they had no protection from central midfield areas and got beaten repeatedly. Although they weren't playing by any means the worst football in the division, they were decent on the ball, decent going forward, and had some creative players, but just couldn't compete. Whereas Nancy, when they came up, looked very similar, especially that game against Lyon, where they got beaten 3-0 at home. Lacazette on form in that game. They just looked out of their depth. They were too open. There wasn't enough protection for the back four. But I think Cray's realised that he needs to adapt his tactics. They're not the best team in the league anymore. They need to be more defensive. They need to counter-attack more. Use the pace of the players they've got wide, which they have some decent attacking players. They're unpredictable, but they can cause fullbacks problems. So sort of switch to that 5-man defence. For that, I think the first thing they did was the week they went to Bastia. They got a draw, which is a very difficult place to go. So they did it right. They obviously proved its worth there, and he's continued. So they've adapted, and they look like, although they're bottom of the league, I'm still not unsure whether they've got the class to stay up, but they've got more of a chance than Troyes did because they're a bit more pragmatic about the way they play their football. So hopefully for them, their season will be a little bit better than the previous Ligue 2 champions upon their promotion.
Right. Let's get your prediction then.
Or Bordeaux 2-0.
Okay. Peter?
I'll go Bordeaux 1-0.
Ethan?
3-0 Bordeaux.
All right. I'll give Nancy some credit here. How about 3-1? Okay, we're moving on now to Angers versus Toulouse, two very informed teams. Peter, Angers are in good form despite the loss of Billy Ketko Pompon on the right. What has changed for Stéphane Moulin's team in recent weeks, and do they have what it takes to hold off Toulouse?
Well, I think the most obvious thing is that Jeju's finally scoring. Obviously, came with a lot of promise from Ligue 2 after such a fantastic season. And he didn't have a great start, fairly stuttering, but here we go. He's finally starting to get some goals. And this is probably due to an increase in service. I think that now that Angers are starting to get a little bit more settled in their starting lineup each week, that he's just trying to start to settle in a lot better. And I think his partnership with Tuka Kambe as well is really, really developing well. I think another thing that's changed for them is that they're cutting out mistakes. A lot of Angers' goals they've conceded so far this season have been silly goals and lapses in concentration. And I think this change in mindset is probably due to the inclusion of some of Angers' more senior players. Sheikh obviously, and Mangani are slightly older veterans, if you like, for Angers, but they provide such experience in the game and a sort of level of organisation that perhaps other players like Santa Maria don't offer. Maybe he does, maybe I'm being harsh, but I think that's something, especially from Mangani, that he offers to that game. So I think their experience is really shining through now, and hopefully they can start to propel themselves in the right direction.
All right, Adam, Ola Toivonen's available again after serving his suspension, but should Dupraz make any changes this weekend, or should the 11 that beat Monaco keep their places?
That's an interesting question, because Ola Toivonen's in this league, he's a very, very useful player, and he's proven his worth before he got injured the last couple of games. We were talking about him after that Lille game. He wasn't injured, he was suspended. Before that Lille game where they went to Lyon 1, and he was fantastic in that game. So I think for me, although they were brilliant against Monaco last week, I would, if I was Dupraz, I'd still want to play my best team, and I think Ola Toivonen is in his best team. It's just where he makes the adjustments, because Oscar Trejo's been great. He's been a man reborn under Dupraz, really. He was anonymous under Domi Abradi last season. And since Dupraz has come in, he's really revitalised him, and he's been a really crucial player. And he was fantastic for long stretches against Monaco. So it's whether you move Trejo out wide or you drop him into centre midfield, and then perhaps Silla drops out or Bodiger drops out. Personally, I think as much as I like Jan Bodiger, maybe Trejo should drop into midfield and Bodiger could drop out for this game, and we'll put Toivonen behind Braithwaite, where he's been successful so far. So I'd like Dupraz to play his strongest side for this game. It's obviously a repeat of the fantastic 3-2 for the end of last season. So I'm very much looking forward to it. And I think if they went that more attacking way, I think they could get Angers here, although Angers have been brilliant in the last few weeks. They look like the Angers of old. So I'd like to see Dupraz go over his strongest team, but it's just whether he makes that decision to drop one of the wider players or Bodiger. But I think Toivonen should play.
All right. So, Peter, your score prediction?
I am going to go for 2-1 to Angers.
Okay. Nathan?
This is going to be a good one. I'm going to go 3-2 Toulouse.
All right. And myself, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Adam?
I wanted 3-2 to lose because that was the score last season. So I'm going to go 2-2, I think.
2-2. All right.
It's the revenge.
Yeah.
The Nathan revenge.
All right. So coming on to you now, Nathan, we're going to talk about Caen, who are hosting Saint-Etienne. They lost in perhaps frustrating fashion to 10-man Montpellier last weekend, but we did see a rejuvenated performance from Hervé Basile, came off the bench. We've talked before about this team needing a spark. Can he be that player that he was 2 seasons ago? Be that spark?
Possibly. You're absolutely right. When he came on in that game against Montpellier, he was a real live wire. He added an extra dimension that we'd said that Caen seemed to be missing. They didn't seem to have someone who would get at teams and try something different, but he wanted to dribble. He was willing to attack. He was willing to give an extra dimension to this Caen team that have really struggled to really put something together, and he put a nice little ball in for Ivan Santini to finish off as well to make it 2-2. And at that stage, with 2 minutes later, when Steve Mooney was sent off for his second booking, you think, well, Connor in a absolutely superb position here to try and go on and win it, but instead, that man Casimir Ninga instead had other ideas. But Montpellier themselves will be disappointed that he's going to be out for I believe it was about 6 months I was reading. So that's a real hammer blow for them. But as for Caen, yeah, I would give him the start, because what do you have to lose at the moment? At the point, Caen don't really have anything that is outstanding. I've seen them play a few times. I think Santini at least will get you goals if you get him service. That's the big thing, and that's getting in the service. Ferre's not been as good as he usually is. I've been impressed by Caramo occasionally, but he was poor in that game against Montpellier, and Basile coming on for him really gave them a bit more impetus. I prefer to see Rodelin a bit closer to the striker as well. He's not being as effective as he was last year because he's not in the box often enough for me, or in and around that area. He's been pushed further wide. But they just need a little bit more. They need to tighten it up a little bit more, I think, as well defensively. I think Yair and now Damien De Silva has been pushed further back into the centre-back area. They need to be a bit sterner and a bit more stubborn against teams, because they allowed someone who like Casimir Ninga, who in fairness was in excellent form, but you can't give him the kind of space and time to turn and create chances for himself. Sometimes it almost seemed, and the space in behind. So there's a lot for Con to work on, because, but at least in this one, it looked like they were creating something going forward. Because if you can't create going forward and you're giving goals at the back, it's a definite recipe for disaster. So yeah, give Basile the chance to try and rediscover that form where he scored 7 goals and 3 assists 2 seasons ago. See if he can recapture that little bit of magic, because he did give them an extra dimension in this one. And yeah, what have Con got to lose at the moment?
What about Saint-Étienne? They've finally gained some fitness back in the squad, excepting Romain Amouma, but their focus still seems to be on Europe. Is Galtier getting the balance wrong with only 3 wins from 9 matches, or is this just the Saint-Étienne condition, if you will?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, we've already mentioned the injuries that they've had and the lack of squad depth because of that. And we mentioned that you have to focus on one or the other, and they've gone for Europe. It's kind of not worked fully as they wanted to, but at the same time, they've been getting away with a few games in Ligue 1 as well. That the game against Dijon score a nice little goal, and then part of the trenches, dig ourselves in and pray to the gods that nothing else happens. It almost did. They almost got incredibly lucky and held off Saint-Étienne, who really struggled to create really anything of meaningful until the last minute, where they get a questionable penalty. I still can't decide whether I'm for it or against it, but Nolan Roux dispatches it superbly, and it really rescues them. Yeah, it's a strange one, because what does he do here with where Saint-Étienne are sat in the table? They're not, in that sort of 9th place. They're not enormously far off everyone else, so that everyone is in a big glut between that 5th place and 11th. They're all about a point separating them. So a win's important, but also it's not going to be the end of the world necessarily, because not everyone's going to run away from them, and they're not going to be in any trouble. But without a midweek game, you want to try and go for this one. But at the same time, with a Thursday game, you've not got the time for the energy. You've already mentioned that probably the creative outlet in Hamouma. That's still a disappointment, because you've mentioned Tanan. He's not in the best of form. Monet Paquet's a measure of frustration as well. Someone who gets in excellent positions but can't seem to deliver the right pass. So Galtier needs to find a nice mix. His ideal game will be Saint-Étienne score early, then they can just thank the gods and sit back again and play like Saint-Étienne tend to play, which is defensively. But whether they can do that against Con, if Con can find that extra spark in someone like Basile after a Thursday night game as well, I'm not so sure.
Your prediction then?
I'm going for a 1-1 draw.
The classic Saint-Étienne scoreline.
Yeah.
Myself, I will go for a 1-0 Saint-Étienne win. Adam?
0-0.
And Peter?
I'm going to go 2-1 Caen.
All right, so we're coming on now to our final match, and it is one of the biggest matches in French football. That's Marseille's trip to PSG. Peter, Marseille are making the headlines today with the appointment of Rudy Garcia. Now, this team has a lot of great attackers, like Thauvin, Cabella, Gomis, when they're all in form, that is. But is the former Roma man's style, that all-out attackingness that is, potentially disastrous, given the team just only seem to just be finding their feet defensively?
Yes, potentially. I mean, admittedly, I didn't see much of Garcia at Roma. I'm not sure precisely why. I think he played 4-3-3, but I'm not, I'm not massively knowledgeable on that. But one thing I do know about him, or from what I've heard anyway, is that he has a lack of a plan B. Now, Marseille is going to be a difficult task as it is. He's got some interesting characters in that team. I do wonder as well if he'll potentially change the captain, because personally, I've got a real problem with the captain of a football club being somebody who actively wants to move away. So he's got a lot to deal with already, and you would wonder that if the team don't adapt quickly to the style that he wants to play, this all-out attacking 4-3-3, then things could go very badly, because I'm not sure quite how Garcia will adapt and change things. But perhaps I'm being harsh. He's obviously had success in Liga in the past with Lille. So yeah, I think the main thing to take from this appointment at the moment is that for the first time in a very long time, there's a lot of positivity around Marseille at the moment, and I think that makes for a nice change.
All right. Adam, do Loam have a chance here with PSG likely to play a rotated side, or is the gulf in class between these two teams simply too much at the moment?
I think they do have a chance. I think they do have a chance. Sorry, for the first game with Rudy Garcia in charge, I think if you look at on paper, they're a decent side. Their front six is actually pretty decent, especially if they can get the first choice 11 out. And with PSG having some issues, all right, they're at home, so they're going to be very difficult to beat. But we're having some issues with Emery still settling in. The players definitely look like they're in transition. We saw Basel cause some problems from wider areas. I think there could be a sort of swell of impetus from Marseille, and I really think that they can cause PSG some problems here. I think it depends a lot on how the Parisians play. Obviously, if they do rotate their side, that could play into Marseille's hands. But I really think they've got a shout here, Marseille, and despite their kind of average form so far, Thuban's been impressive. Gomez is getting the goals. Diarra's back in the side. The defense doesn't look as leaky as I thought it might be. So, yeah, I think Marseille could at least push PSG. They might not get the win, but a draw isn't by any means unlikely.
All right, and coming out of you now, Nathan. Finally, with Frank McCourt buying Marseille, do you see a way that this match could be what it was 4 or 5 years ago? Or are we accepting that Loam are another mid-table side for the foreseeable future?
This match isn't going to be what it was 4 or 5 years ago on Sunday. That's for guarantee. But in the future, it depends on how much he's willing to put in, because there's no doubt that the Paris Saint-Germain machine will keep going. Whether the Marseille one will decide to try and catch them is another thing. I think we could probably expect another season at least of probably a mid-table side, but steadily improving, hopefully under new management in Rudy Garcia, who at least is a step up from what they've had in the more recent past at least. And hopefully there's a bit of investment. Hopefully it's smart investment as well to the right kind of players, maybe young Ligue 1 players that they know they can improve, or young players from across Europe. And like you mentioned on the main show on Monday, that having that similar model to Monaco of building a squad from getting young talented people to buy into the system. Hopefully then that can make this to a point where they make it to a game where it's really competitive again. But whether it's going to be something like it was 4 or 5 years ago ever again, unless he spends real big money and Marseille also can keep hold of the talent they grow, which is another question entirely, then probably not. I don't know if we'll see it ever again, with the amount that Paris Saint-Germain have really pushed themselves over the bar to that echelon of that European football, at least at the moment, is of being a real heavyweight. So the answer in the end is a no, unless he gets a little bit silly with it. No.
All right, we'll do score predictions. I'll go for a 3-1 home win for the champions. Adam?
2-1 PSG.
All right. Peter?
Oh, sorry, I think I just cut out a minute there.
Your score prediction? Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, that's okay. I can't see anything but a PSG win, if I'm totally honest. I think Garcia will have an impact, but maybe not in this short space of time. So I'm going to go for a 3-0 PSG.
3-0. Okay, Nathan?
I'll go for a Peter Bowler special of 5-0 PSG.
All right.
Do I get a share of the points if that happens?
Yeah. No.
That's all for this week. I've been Eric Devin with Nathan Staples, Peter Bowler, and Adam White. Please do follow us on Twitter at the GFFN Show and at GFFN to stay up to date with all the latest from around Ligue 1 French football. We'll be back on Monday with the regular show at 8 p.m. UK time, 9 p.m. European Standard Time. Thank you and have a pleasant weekend.